if there's one thing I really have a weakness for, is really good food. And I do have quite a sweet tooth, and this time of year, there's one thing that was always available at every supermarket that you walk by that I simply cannot resist. And I have a couple of recipes for this dish today, but this one is kind of my own take on a traditional hot cross bun. So today on Jay's World Kitchen, I'm going to show you my method to make delicious hot cross buns right in your own home with things that you probably have on hand. Those are 4 cups of bread flour, 1 tablespoon of yeast, 2.5 teaspoons of mixed spice, and I'll talk about that recipe a little later, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/3 cup of brown sugar, 1/2 cup of sultanas or raisins or yellow raisins, 1/2 cup of mixed peel, 1 egg lightly beaten, 1/4 cup and 3 tablespoons of butter, and 1¼ cups of warm milk. Now, to make the crosses on these buns, you're also going to need 1/2 cup of flour, 2 teaspoons of icing sugar, and 1/4 cup and 3 tablespoons of water. And finally, we're going to put a glaze on these right at the very end, and that's going to be 1/3 cup of sugar and 1/4 cup of water. Now today I'm also going to be using my hands to do all of the mixing instead of using my mixer. We're going to start off in a large bowl with our flour and our mixed spice. Now, just in case you don't have mixed spice and you don't know what that is, you can make your own by doing 1 tablespoon of ground cinnamon, 2 teaspoons of ground allspice, 2 teaspoons of ground nutmeg, 1 teaspoon of ground cloves, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, 1 teaspoon of ground coriander, and 3/4 teaspoon of ground mace. Well mixed together, and I always keep a jar of that in my cupboard because I know I'm going to use it in recipes like this. So we've got our mixed spice in there. We're going to add in our salt, our sugar, and our yeast. And just very quickly with a whisk, we're just going to quickly mix that all together. But already you can smell that wonderful spicy smell. Now with my raisins and sultanas, I soaked them in brandy for a few hours before I started this. But before you put it in there, you are going to definitely have to drain it out. Pop those into your flour mixture with your other candied peel. And this really is a personal preference. Some people don't like to use the brandy. Traditionally, you could actually soak your raisins and sultanas in a nice warm cup of tea for up to 12 hours before you start. Basically, it's just to give them a little bit more moisture. Get that in there, and we're just going to give that a quick mix. Once all your dry ingredients are well mixed, we're going to add in our beaten egg, our butter, and I've melted mine and just let it slightly cool so that it's not hot. Put that in, and finally your warmed milk. And again, I just put mine in the microwave just to warm it up, and to about 100 Fahrenheit, no higher than that. You really don't want it to scald the yeast. And we're just using a big wooden spoon here to mix this all together into a dough. And once it starts coming together, you're probably going to have to use your hands. And you're just going to keep going until all of that comes together into a nice, smooth dough. Once that's almost all together, we're just going to put that onto a lightly floured surface. And if there's any dry bits at the bottom of the bowl, that's okay. Add them to the top of your dough. And we're simply going to knead this for about 5 minutes. And once your dough is quite smooth and elastic, we're simply going to take a bowl, and I'm just using my flour bowl. I'm spraying it down with a little bit of oil, and we're simply going to pop that in there, give it a slight spritz with oil, cover the bowl with plastic wrap and a tea towel, and set it aside for an hour to rise. So our dough has now been rising for about an hour, and as you can see, it's kind of doubled in size, which is perfect, exactly what we would like to see. And now we're going to deflate that all completely and turn it out onto a lightly floured surface. And we're just going to knead it for about 30 seconds. And that smell is just amazing. You can just smell all of that spice in there. And now that we've been kneading that for about 30 seconds, we're going to divide this into about 16 pieces. Now, once again, if you really want to, you can weigh this dough and then weigh out each piece of it, but I just prefer to eyeball it. And once you've done that, you're basically just going to roll each piece into a ball of dough like that, and we're going to place them into a greased pan, and I'm just using my favorite pan, of course. And once you got them all in there, and you may have to squish them around a little bit to get them all in, just cover it up with plastic wrap yet again, and cover it with your cloth and leave it to rise for about half an hour. Now, while that's rising, we're going to do a couple of things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to preheat our oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. The second thing we're going to do is mix together our very simple dough, which is going to be the crosses on the top of our buns. And I'm just using all-purpose flour here, your icing sugar, mix it up, just so that there's a little bit of sweetness to it, and our water. And it's not going to be a very thin dough, but it's going to basically just go over the top once they've risen. And I'm just going to be using a simple piping bag, but you could use a Ziploc bag if that's all that you have available. And we're simply going to pop that into our piping bag, just like that. We're going to seal that up and set it aside until our buns have risen. And so now it's been half an hour, and we've got our dough ready for the crosses of our hot cross buns. I'm just chopping off the very end of that so we can pipe it on and uncover your buns. And it's really a very simple process. Just go all the way across. And then, of course, in the other direction. And now you're going to pop those into your 375 degree oven and immediately turn your oven down to 350 degrees and let that bake for about 20 to 25 minutes while we very quickly prepare a simple syrup. We're simply going to put our 1/4 cup of water and our 1/3 of a cup of sugar into a small saucepan and bring that to a boil. And the moment your buns come out of the oven, we're going to take our simple syrup that we've just let cool a little bit and simply brush the tops of them quite liberally. And now we're going to let them cool and enjoy. The wonderful thing about making these hot cross buns is the smell in the house. It's a fruity and spicy aroma that just sort of lingers there and just is wonderful. Plus you've got that sort of bread smell in there. And I love the way that these turned out. Now my favorite way to enjoy one of these is cut in half, toasted, and then very, very liberally spread with some butter just to let that melt. And I really can't wait to taste these because these aren't going to last long at all in my house. Now, if you're expecting what you'd get in a supermarket from a hot cross bun, this is not it. This is wonderfully flavored. There's a slight hint of sweetness, so it's not overly sweet. The spice is definitely in there, and you can taste that mixed spice quite strongly, but not in an overpowering way. I love how subtle the sugar is and the aftertaste of the sugar is in there. The butter, of course, certainly makes it, and the toastedness makes it for me. I'm definitely going to be having more of these. I would love to hear from you if you tried this recipe. If you do, please leave your comments in the comment section below and let me know how they turned out for you, or what you did or added to make this recipe unique to you. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and remember to turn on notifications so that you know when my next video drops. Remember too that you can follow me on all my social media, and those links are below in the comment section on my Linktree link. If you enjoy baking, check out this playlist for breads, buns and pastries, and it's a collection of all of my recipes for these items. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, happy eating.